most likely all of us have had those moments where you're asking, like, why is this happening to me? Like, why me? I've got to be the only one who's experiencing that. And that's true. Like, your experiences are uniquely your own. But so many times there's always a common thread that we can all relate to.
Yeah, they're like uniquely common, right? I say this in my yoga studio,
Yeah.
like nothing that you've experienced, someone else hasn't experienced. Like we're really not alone. And I think that there's this moment, and it's almost like, depending on when you start having kids, it's this coming out of the haze of all of the doing of having little ones. And, you finally get your breath of fresh air, and maybe your kids are starting preschool at that point. There's a little bit of, all of a sudden you get a moment and you're like, holy shit, whoa, who am I? What am I doing? No, I'm not happy. For me, I had this moment. It started at like 35 was my age. I think you said you were 33.
I was 33.
And my kids were, at least, sleeping through the night. They were, walking on their own, wiping their own butts for the most part at that point. But I had this, and I had to face my sexual trauma that I had never really addressed. And, I was going through this kind of sexual revolution and awakening of just rediscovering my femininity and my sexuality, my sensuality, and just me as a individual person outside of this label as mom, because that's not sustainable. And I think a lot of women are in that same position where they finally get their breath of fresh air and it's like really stanky. It's
Yeah.
like, what the hell happened? So many years went by and we're just in survival, because as much of a blessing and as glorious as it is to have little newborns, but you're sleep deprived, you're health deprived, you're movement deprived, you're socially deprived, because you're not focused on yourself, which, naturally so, because you have small little beings to care for. But that is a moment that I think a lot of women can identify with, see themselves, hear themselves in, and also be like, what the hell? What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly it. And I think for me, so at the time, I had two kids under two when my husband asked me that, that 603 moment where he asked me if I was happy. I was quickly rising up the corporate ladder. I had a very, well-respected job at Google where I was a sales and marketing leader. And I really threw myself into that. Like, I threw myself into my corporate identity because I felt like I knew what the hell I was doing. And in my like mom identity, I had no idea. And so part of what I also had to unpack for myself was like, how do I actually unpack those identities and figure out, what is it that I like about each of those? Like, what is it that like feels uniquely me? And then how do I, like, we're always going to be labeled. Like we're always going to put labels on ourselves. We're always going to put labels on other people, intentionally or not. So, society is going to do it again, intentionally or not. And so what I've had to come to terms with is recognizing, how can I be comfortable with those labels and like use them to my advantage that feels like authentically me, and be okay with that. And so if I had to like reintroduce myself to people I've known for years, but to say like, hey, I'm Jessi and I'm a mama, I'm a fertility advocate, I'm a sales and business strategist, right? Like all of those things that feel like me, and like own that versus it owning me. And I think for so long, those things had owned me without me realizing it.